Welcome back to New Rockstars. The death of Jabba the Hutt has left a power vacuum in the criminal underworld of Tatooine, but after the Mandalorian Season 2 final scene, Boba Fett and Fennec Shand are now taking over Jabba's operation in the Book of Boba Fett. Is this Star Wars Sopranos? Or, like the child in the pilot of The Mandalorian, is a major Star Wars cameo being hidden from all this promotional material?
What the
Fett? I tried to get in a good Sopranos. Tony.
Gabagool.
Hey, look at us. Wookieeleaks is back. It's New Rockstars Star Wars After Show. And big announcement, Wookieeleaks is going to be a weekly Star Wars show on this channel throughout 2022. We're going to be covering Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka, Mandalorian Season 3, Cassian Andor, everything in between. I'm Eric Voss, and I'm back with Tommy Bechtold.
Oh God, I can't wait. Oh man.
I mean, the last time we saw each other on this show, Tommy, Grogu was being kidnapped.
We were two grown men with tears in our eyes, completely devastated and also amazed.
But now we're back. We're talking Boba Fett, but we're going to be talking everything Star Wars every Wednesday, maybe a different day of the week in between new shows, but we're going to be back every week, and I'm so excited to be back with you, Tommy.
Yes.
This week, we're going to be looking ahead at the 7 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. Why is so much being kept from us in this series? How will it connect to the plot threads from The Mandalorian and Ahsoka? And where are Luke and Grogu and Ahsoka during this series? And who will be this Grogu-style cameo that clearly is going to come up in this show?
Yes. I think it's going to be Watto.
I mean, look, we laugh about it, but you know Watto's going to show up again.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like this guy.
Watto's not done. Just like every character in Star Wars that you think is done, Watto will not be done.
They'll find a way to bring him back. Before we get into everything, keep an eye out for a new release from our merch partners at Epic Hero Shop. Last year, even though it seems like 5 years ago, we got this bad boy, but they're going to be dropping a new Laced Obsession shirt inspired by the Book of Boba Fett. So you can grab one for yourself at newrockstarsmerch.com when it comes out. It's going to be a limited edition shirt, going to come in a variety of colors and sizes. And when you grab one of those Latest Obsession shirts, you'll be getting the added option to write a custom shout out that will appear along the bottom of these Book of Boba Fett after shows. So check it all out, newrockstarsmerch.com or epicheroshop.com.
Yes.
But Tommy, what's our first question as we look ahead at the Book of Boba Fett?
Well, Eric, I think it's pretty obvious. What the Fett is the Book of Boba Fett?
What is this show?
Yeah.
Well, Tommy and I are going to co-explain this for you.
Yes.
We're going to tag team it. But let's start by breaking down everything we know about the series. The Book of Boba Fett is going to pick up with Boba Fett after his live-action return in The Mandalorian Season 2. Temuera Morrison, who played Jango Fett in the prequels, and of course all of his clones by extension, and therefore what adult Boba Fett would look like, is now back in this universe. He actually first showed up in Chapter 5, recovering the dying Fennec Shand from the sands of Tatooine, and then we saw his face in Chapter 9 on Tatooine, while he was watching Din Djarin speed off with his armor that he obtained from Cobb Vanth Refrigeration, and when they slayed the Crate Dragon. And then Boba and Fennec followed them to Tython in Chapter 14, the old Jedi ruins, where they reached out to Luke Skywalker, we later learned.
Yes.
And that's where Moff Gideon's Imperial forces bombed Mando's ship, the Razor Crest. And so with the finale, they used the Slave One and a hijacked Imperial ship in order to board Moff Gideon's ship and rescue Grogu. They were, of course, aided by Luke Skywalker, who took the child in order to train the child. And then in the post-credit scene, Boba and Fennec return to Jabba's palace on Tatooine, where they kill Bib Fortuna while he was halfway on his way to becoming the heavyoeight that Jabba the Hutt was.
Bib Fortuna had not missed a meal. He was eating a lot of fatty tuna, I think.
Not at all. And then Boba took the throne as Fennec picked up a bottle of spotchka and drowned herself in it.
Absolutely. Well, smart move. So this 7-episode series will show Boba and Fennec's attempt to replace Jabba the Hutt as the leader of the captains in Jabba's criminal cartel on Tatooine. Boba claims to want to rule with respect instead of fear, but really using Fennec as his enforcer, it seems, from the little we can tell from that trailer. In addition to Temuera Morrison and Ming-Na Wen, Jennifer Beals is also playing a Twi'lek on the show, so I'm excited for more Twi'leks. I've always been mystified by their pleasure gardens. And then
yeah, especially a Twi'lek dancer or whoever she is having an actual narrative role in it rather than just being set dressing.
Yes.
I want to know what her story is.
Absolutely.
You mentioned a cartel. Tommy and I were once part of an improv team.
Yes,
called
we were.
That had like a total of like 45 rotating members over the years.
It was like Menudo.
Yeah.
Anytime anyone got knocked, anytime someone stopped being cute, we fired them and got a new cute member. On the team.
And like in other cartels, rather than people leading each other with respect, it was led by fear.
It was fear.
Every time you walked out and looked at your scene partner, just pure abject terror overtook us.
I don't know what you want me to do in this scene.
But you're screaming at me, and I feel like I just have to let you scream
Why
for
are you
3
shouting
minutes.
so much? Yes.
Well, Mando Chapter 14 updated the Fett backstory so that Jango Fett was truly now considered a Mandalorian foundling. That was something Dave Filoni before had suggested was not the case, both in interviews and a line from the Mandalorian leader Almec in Clone Wars. But now Boba's Mandoa chain code mentioned the armor belonged to his father, Jango Fett, who this chain code said was born on Concordan, and his mentor was Jaster Muriel, who was a member of the Mandalorian clan that were actually rivals to the Death Watch, and the Watch was, of course, the clan that brought up Din Djarin.
Yes.
So just like a different family of Mandalorian warriors. And then earlier this year, the animated series Bad Batch came out. I know a lot of you might not have watched Bad Batch, but it actually did a lot to further update the histories of both Boba Fett and Fennec Shand. Fennec showed up in this series, also voiced by Ming-Na Wen, and she was a mercenary trying to retrieve Omega, the new young character who accompanied the 5 members of the Bad Batch. And first, Fennec Shand tried to take Omega on the planet Pantora in episode 4, and then in episode 5, the Bad Batch tried to learn who hired Fennec Shand from the character Sid on the planet Ord Mantell by rescuing the Rancor baby Moochie for Jabba the Hutt via Bib Fortuna, who shows up on this show. Now, Moochie is not the Rancor that Luke fights in Return of the Jedi. But we do see in footage of the Book of Boba Fett, there is a shot that is looking up from the Rancor pit. So I wonder if Moochie could be like another Rancor that were in those stables who is now replacing the original Rancor.
Moochie.
We love Moochie so Moochie. But then in episode 9 of Bad Batch, we learn actually that Omega is another Jango Fett clone. Another clone that they can derive genetic material from. So that, in a way, makes her sort of clone sister, if you consider them brother and sister. They aren't genetically, they're just other clones of each other. But she's a clone sister to Boba Fett. But in this episode, Fennec fights the bounty hunter Cad Bane and allows Omega to escape. So they're on roughly good terms. And that could set up Omega to show up as an adult in live action on this series if Filoni wants to go in that direction.
Yeah, okay. I gotta watch more of the Bad Batch is what I just learned.
Yeah, you gotta check it out.
All right, so the events of Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2, and presumably the events of Book of Boba Fett, are set in the year 9 ABY in the Star Wars timeline. So that would be about 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and about 25 years before The Force Awakens. And and then the other ones that came after The Force Awakens that are not bad movies and you need to stop being really toxic about. Anyway, Luke Skywalker spent these years researching Jedi history. Luke begins training Ben Solo, in 15 ABY, builds a new Jedi temple. Then in 28 ABY, Luke and Ben fight. The temple burns and the voice of Snoke, or technically Palpatine, lures Ben to the dark side. I have been every voice in your head.
Inside your head.
I wish one was Jar Jar. Lures Ben to the dark side. And then Ben takes them the name of Kylo Ren, which was such a great name. And in Mando Chapter 12, in an Imperial lab on Navarro, they find clone bodies and tanks that look like early versions of Snoke. Little baby Snokes. Cute. I always dreamed of being a father, and I would like one day to look down in a bassinet and see a little baby Snoke staring up at me. Uh,
You mean like Mr. Burns' naked
yes,
body
yeah,
floating in
yeah, exactly, and voiced by Andy Serkis. This is all suggesting the efforts of Dr. Pershing and Moff Gideon are later co-opted by what is going to become the First Order.
We're talking a lot about the sequel trilogy now, and we don't really know what happens to Grogu during that sequel future,
Right.
but it is highly unlikely that Kylo Ren killed Grogu.
Right.
I did a whole video on this looking into, could Grogu have been that grave that Luke was, seemed like he was mourning on Ahch-To. I don't think that's the case, because, if you look at the life cycle of the Yoda Grogu species, when we first meet Grogu, he is 50, but he's still an infant. But we also know that Yoda, by the age of 100, was a Jedi Master who was already teaching other Jedi. So there's going to be a period of rapid maturation between the ages of 50 and 100. I don't think we're going to see a lot of time jumps. I think all these new shows that are taking place post original trilogy are going to be in a few years of time.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to jump ahead to beyond the sequel trilogy, at least on this show. I think we're going to maybe have other Star Wars stories that do that. But I mean, I don't know. I think the less Grogu in The Mandalorian and Boba Fett and Ahsoka tie into the First Order and the sequel trilogy events, the better.
Yeah.
I think the sequel trilogy, just let them do all their thing. And right now we're in kind of this new era of time that is very exciting. And I don't need to know a ton about how the First Order rose.
I agree.
I'm happy just exploring these characters and other storylines that they're following. But I have to tell you, Tommy, there have been some rumors that suggest a Grogu prop or a puppet was spotted on the set of the Book of Boba Fett, and that this little kiddo is going to be accompanied by someone else. So I want to ask you, do you think Grogu will appear during these 7 episodes? And if so, do you think his escort is more likely to be another Luke Skywalker VFX character, or could Rosario Dawson return as Ahsoka Tano as his Jedi mentor on this series?
Oh man, I really hope it's Luke. I really hope it's Luke Skywalker, because I want to learn more about what Luke was doing between the end of Force Awakens and the end of Return of the Jedi. And when we last saw him flying in that X-Wing to go pick up Grogu. I really hope it's Luke. I feel like it's probably going to be Rosario Dawson, though, if this rumor is true, because it's just, they don't need to have an actor and I don't know. I just think having an actual person there is probably maybe more preferable. I don't know. That's just my
Yeah,
count.
they committed so hard to trying to de-age Mark Hamill's face and do all that. And there was that interesting moment where like he looked amazing, and then he started talking, and some people were like, Uncanny Valley a little bit. And there was that other YouTuber, the VFX artist, who made like a better version of it, and Lucasfilm hired that guy.
Oh, wow.
Which I just love how that worked out. But every year that passes, they're getting a little bit better on this. But it seems like the lesson a lot of VFX artists and filmmakers have learned is that try to do a version of the character that doesn't speak. Or if they speak, you don't see their mouth have to move, or maybe you cover their mouth in some way. And I don't know how they would do that with Luke Skywalker if he is going to be a returning character in these series. I honestly would prefer maybe just recast it. We talked about Sebastian Stan, it kind of looks like Mark Hamill did a little bit. I don't know if that's a casting choice. Realistically, I think they want to build up Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano. She's going to have her own series. And if Ahsoka does show up in 2022 as a mini series, I hope so. I think Book of Boba Fett is where they're going to have to do it. Even though that I believe Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader is confirmed to appear during the Ahsoka series at some point, maybe via flashback or some other kind of like force memory or something like that. So that might be Obi-Wan Kenobi could be a place that Ahsoka could show up in as well. But I think it's just more likely she didn't consider herself worthy of training the child. There would have to imply some kind of partnership, some kind of relationship, or maybe Luke was like, I can't handle this student. We got to bring in it.
He's too wild.
He's too unruly. But I would love if there's some kind of implied a relationship between Ahsoka and Luke. I knew your dad. And maybe like Ahsoka could have been someone who helped Luke continue his training
Right.
during
Yeah.
that period. All right, Tommy, what's our next question about the Book of Boba Fett?
Our next What the Fett question is, what the Fett is the future of Star Wars storytelling? We've touched on it a little bit earlier, but
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to depend on how much I think people really love the Book of Boba Fett. I honestly think when Obi-Wan Kenobi comes out later this year, that's going to be the big show that everyone talks about. But it kind of tells us that there are 2 eras, maybe 3 eras that Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy and the Star Wars creative team are exploring. You have the pre-OT and the post-OT, right before the original trilogy and then like right after the original trilogy. You have the pre-original trilogy stories like Obi-Wan Kenobi, that's going to be between Revenge of the Sith and before A New Hope. Cassian Andor, that's going to be leading up to Rogue One. You might see the Lando Calrissian series during this time as well.
Yeah.
We know there's going to be a Lando show. I would think Donald Glover era of Lando.
Yeah, that's what I was
is going to be the one you'd explore.
Yeah.
But we also know of the Acolyte, and they just cast, it sounds like Amanda Stenberg as its lead, and that's going to be taking place during the final years of the High Republic era. So that would set that before potentially the prequels, before the Clone Wars erupted. So that would be, early years of Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yeah.
That's early years. But then we also have this other era of right after Return of the Jedi. That's when the Mandalorian take place, Boba Fett, the Ahsoka series that she's hunting down Thrawn is going to take place that. But we also know of we could see a Lando Calrissian series that has Billy D. Williams as the era, because they had that little moment at the end of The Rise of Skywalker where Lando's talking with Janna, and it kind of seemed like they were potentially spinning that off to be a new thing. We haven't heard anything about that, just because the studio doesn't really seem to know what lessons they have learned from The Rise of Skywalker, if any at all, other than it seems like this third rail that they don't want to touch. Because we had Patty Jenkins who's going to direct Rogue Squadron, and that's just been indefinitely delayed. We don't know when or if that's ever going to come out. We had Rangers of the New Republic. That was going to be a series with potentially Gina Carano. That has been shelved.
But she's making a movie with Ben Shapiro, so she's fine.
That's right. Yes, her career is doing fine. It seems like all Star Wars movies are in kind of this uncertain place, and it seems like Kathleen Kennedy, George Lucas have trusted Dave Filoni through these little mini series to kind of continue the narrative. It just seems like we're not really sure if it's going to be leaning more towards the later era or the earlier era. But I think the Acolyte has the most creative unrestricted future in which to explore and not feel worried that they'd overlap or contradict any other events from the prequels. But which one are you more excited to see more of? This kind of Ahsoka, Mando, Grogu era?
I really love that, because to me, it's also, Ahsoka, with Grogu and Mandalorian, these are 2 new characters that we had no knowledge of their existence. So everything they're doing is new Star Wars content without any destiny. You know what I mean? We don't know. We know with most of the other characters what their destiny is, at least up until Rise of Skywalker anyway, or in any of the animated shows or things like that. I'm just loving, I'm really excited for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think you're right. I think that show is going to be absolutely massive. I am very excited for that show. And it's just such a great time to be a fan of new Star Wars stories, right? Oh my God, there's just so much coming out. And they really have a grasp in the TV world anyway of what makes Star Wars so fun. They have such a high batting average with these episodes of this is even the ones that are just kind of adventure, one-off adventure episodes are still fun Star Wars adventures. If you're a fan of the tone and in the world of Star Wars, they're just, each one is a little 35-minute movie.
And they keep it simple. They celebrate the production design. They really have a good sense of tone.
They put a guy in a nice, sensible pair of denims in the background every once in a while.
And then take them out. But I think, to me, the shows like Obi-Wan Kenobi, what Clone Wars was, what Bad Batch seems to be, is what I like to call prequel redemption for fans who think that the prequels were unfairly maligned. I thought that they did a lot of good things to contribute to Star Wars
Yeah.
lore. It's like Filoni taking all these cool things that were made for the prequels and telling new stories with them.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what Obi-Wan Kenobi is. It's even though I think Revenge of the Sith is still a great movie
Yeah.
that holds up and gets better and better with each rewatch.
Absolutely.
And I think Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to be like the follow-up to Revenge of the Sith that tells other people like, no, there was a great relationship here that's going to be explored further.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems like what we love about The Mandalorian is it just feels fresh and it feels like a redux. And I think that's what they want to explore with the Book of Boba Fett. Other things from the original trilogy, really, really going back to the early days and just exploring that world a little bit further. I get a little nervous anytime they start to approach things that feel like First Order early days. Like, I don't want it. I kind of want them to take their time, and then each episode takes place just the next day or like a week later or something. Because I was just at Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland and I loved it. Like what they built for it is so cool. But my one note, and I'm hoping that like Disney and Lucasfilm considers this in the future, is it just spends so much time steeped in the Resistance era of Star Wars. I love Rise of the Resistance as a ride, but like so much of it is like Kylo Ren focused, and I think it would be an easy switch in like later versions of that ride just to make it Darth Vader who chases you through a starship, you know? But that's, you know, whatever. I think overall these production designers are so talented, and I am not one of these Star Wars fans who believes that we should decanonize the sequel trilogy, that we should pretend like it never happened. No, if we if we have to keep the prequel trilogy as official Star Wars canon, we have to consider the sequel trilogy as a Star Wars canon.
I agree.
But like, if we want to celebrate any particular era of the Star Wars nonology, let's go back to the original trilogy, and that seems to be what the Book of Boba Fett and what the Mandalorian is doing. And that's, I think, why so many people just kind of universally love these stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So let's move on here. Could this series follow Ahsoka's search for Thrawn? And if that is something that this series does, who should play Thrawn besides you or I if they don't go to us? I'm going to play Braun.
I'm just gonna play John.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
You're gonna play John.
Yeah, if Ahsoka shows up on this show, I think they're gonna have to give us a bit more about what exactly she wants from Thrawn, because that was such a fun detail that they threw into her episode of The Mandalorian. I think it'd be great if they could just hire Lars Mikkelsen to do this. He's the guy who voiced him in Star Wars Rebels. He's a great live action actor as well. It seems like Filoni is all about doing this by having Katie Sackhoff play Bo-Katan in live action. Like, these actors are so good at playing both. Why not have her in that role? In the same way that I think Freddie Prinze Jr. in live action could be great as well.
I agree.
Playing his character, you know,
I think they got to get. I really want Freddie Prinze Jr. to get a chance to be in a live action Star Wars thing, because he's such an authentic nerd in real life too. Like,
he'd be great.
He deserves.
He'd be great.
Come on.
And I think what we have found with The Mandalorian is, like, yes, Pedro Pascal is a known actor, but you don't have to have his face on screen all the time. Like, the real star of these shows is the universe, is the production design, is the music, is all the stuff that we loved about Star Wars. You don't need big name actors to get people to tune in.
Nope.
So just celebrate the world you've already built.
Yeah.
And I think no one gets that better than Dave Filoni.
I agree. I think he's got such a good grasp on what is important and what is not.
Now, let's talk about the character of Omega coming out of Bad Batch. I think a lot of people who watch Clone Wars watch Bad Batch, but there's a lot of people who watch The Mandalorian who did not watch Bad Batch, who just don't watch a lot of the animated series. Do we think that if they were to introduce Omega in live action, that might be too much of a, I don't know, like a whiplash for just the live action viewers?
Yeah. I mean,
are they gonna be like, wait, Boba Fett has a sister? Like, are they just gonna...
But you know what? All of the animated characters that have shown up in the TV shows, I haven't watched much of Clone Wars or Rebels, and I knew who Ahsoka Tano was, and I knew who Bo-Katan was, and I knew, you know, those characters were not like new to me. Like, I was like, I didn't have to be like, who are they? So I mean, maybe with a little more Omega prepping, maybe we just need to get a little more Omega in the atmosphere so people know that character, and then you can introduce her live action without any sort of who the hell is this reaction.
Right. I think it's all about the character's reintroduction, right? So Ahsoka Tano had such a badass introduction. In that episode, you just see her sabers lighting up in the mist, right? Or the smoke. And then you have Bo-Katan's introduction was awesome in that episode of The Mandalorian. Now she's leading the Night Owls, and she's just a fierce warrior. So I think that we would need something similar with an adult version of Omega. Michelle Ong voiced her on Bad Batch. I've seen some fan casting for the actress Frankie Adams from The Expanse, who's a Samoan New Zealand actress who could play a version of Omega in live action. That could be really fun. Yeah, I think it'd be if Filoni's just sticking to his guns and what he has done with these other things, like introduce these characters in live action as a way to get people to go back on Disney Plus and maybe watch some of these
He's
series. Brilliant. I think bringing in Omega in live action, I'd be excited to see that, especially if Boba Fett's now trying to build a new crime empire. What does any Godfather or Tony Soprano want more than having a new dynasty?
That's right.
Protect? Well, I wanted to ask you, Tommy, do you think we'll ever learn how Boba Fett escaped from the Sarlacc?
Yes.
Is that just going to be a mystery that they keep,
No, it's very simple. It's thanks to our friends at Blue Chew and Manscaped. No, I thought maybe I was wrong. I thought they released like a quick little piece of footage of like part of the Sarlacc like flopping out of the pit, like implying that like it had been severed.
Yeah, they've had like different stories that have kind of explained it or implied it, right? Like, but are we gonna finally get Boba Fett explaining it?
I think we have to. I think they have to. It's like, it's like Quint on the boat in Jaws. You got to have that. Like there's got to be a moment when Boba Fett's sitting down with his boots up on a table. And he's like, they never thought I'd get out of that pit. And they're like, Boba, you tell this story. What they should do is they should then zag and be like, Boba, you've told us this story 1,000,000 times, and then just not tell us, the viewer.
What I want is Boba to have like infinite versions of the story that he keeps telling, like Joker in Dark Knight. He's like, oh, you want to know how I got these scars? Well,
my father was a Jedi.
I fell into a time vortex in the belly of the Sarlacc, and then I went back in time.
Perfect.
I killed the Sarlacc when he was a baby, and then I went back to the present.
Yes.
And then I was just in a sandy pit in the middle of nowhere.
That's what I want.
Well, that is it for this week's episode of Wookieeleaks. We are going to be back.
We're back, baby.
Days from now, Wednesday, December 29th, with our reaction to the premiere of the Book of Boba Fett, and hopefully some of these questions will start to be answered. Don't forget to check out our many great merch options at newrockstarsmerch.com. Follow me at EA Voss. Follow Tommy at Tommy Bechtold. Follow New Rockstars. Subscribe to Wookieeleaks wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for watching, and we have spoken.